So now I'd like to ask you a little bit more about frequency and how that connects back to cellular spirituality.
And I will say that a lot of words fail experience, and it's taken me a long time to find the right word that describes what happens when you shed emotions that feel like chains, or as the Bible states, lumber in your eye. You cannot see, I guess another phrase would be you can't see the forest through the trees. I'm trying to think of all these colloquialisms that would relate, that people would understand.
Of course.
And so as I was doing energy work with people, and I did a lot of energy work when I was a hospice chaplain, I noticed, and things started to come to me, people like Tesla or Marconi, who discovered different frequencies. And so that word started to come across my radar, just kept coming and coming, and I just wasn't sure if that was a word that would fit for me. But as I got comfortable with the word, I realized it's actually a pretty spot-on word to describe what is happening, or a vibration, the vibration. And when my cells started to shed things that I would call like anger or abandonment, I bought into certain lies that actually were not true but affected my body. And as I shed that, I could feel this increase, this lift up, this frequency, this vibration. And those are, then came certain tools and skills that I learned to actually allow me to have a practice that I would be in more control of rising my frequency, as opposed to waiting for it to just come to me. I wanted to find a way where I could be more in control on how and when that would happen. So say I'm having a bad day and somebody may have said something to me and I wasn't really happy about it. Well, there's a couple of things with that statement. That first off, self-esteem actually comes from the inside, not from the outside. So I had to have a change of thought where things that were coming from the outside would bounce off like rubber. They just bounce right off me, because a lot of what people say is 80% projection. It's the fruits of what's in their spirit, not what's in mine. And as I started to have a change of thought, then I didn't allow my day to have other obstacles. I didn't have other speed bumps that I needed to manage. So then I was able to focus on just managing my own conversations in my head. And when I took yoga training for Kundalini, they had said that most people have 16 personalities. And I remember laughing inside, kind of like, that makes a lot of sense. It's awful noisy inside. And there's a lot of, it almost felt like different personalities that were not stitched together. And I heard shamans talk to me about different parts of my life where I may have compartmentalized times in my life because an event that happened that I had not dealt with it. So they wanted me to go back to certain ages, and one was 8 years old. They said, I want you to take some time and I want you to go back and play with an 8-year-old. What would you do with an 8-year-old? And I was like, this is so silly. I feel like crazy, like playing with an 8-year-old. Like, what is that about? But I played, and I paid for this session, so I'm going to go do it now. I'm going to do what they said. And I felt a merge. I felt, instead of that event, which I couldn't necessarily recall, but I knew what they were talking about, because as soon as she said 8-year-old, I was like, ooh, it's out here. I brought it in, made peace with it, loved that 8-year-old, gave her the things that maybe I wasn't able to accept from other people back then. Maybe I didn't feel I was worthy of it, but I went back to that time frame and tried to have a change of thought and have a change of, as I was having a change of thought, that actually healed something inside, and then I'd feel that increase of vibration or increase of frequency, which affected all of my cells, which made my ability to be closer to God. And back to that scenario where I said that God's just waiting for our free will to walk towards God. And so as I shed these things that I don't need to carry around with me. I started to feel that more awe feeling, and then I started to have more control of how I could feel it, or if, I don't know, something may be cropping up, because when you're going through emotional or spiritual growth, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. The issue comes up, you're like, oh no, I really don't want to handle that right now, but yet you do. It's that no, please more. And so when you finally put it out on the table and you look at it and you try to clear some of those emotions out and say, is this true? Is this true that you were abandoned, Stacy? And then I would add God to the equation. What would God say to you, Stacy? God would say, I've been here the whole time. Why didn't you look to me? Why didn't you lean on me? I've been here wanting to hold your hand. And then all of a sudden, it was almost like the 8-year-old just melded. A 16-year-old melded. And as they melded, my frequency would rise. And then you're able to hear more. And then you're able to discern more. And then all those little voices started to shift. Because my 8-year-old hadn't got the attention that it needed. So it was still fighting for my attention and a healing. You know, you ever see a kid throw a temper tantrum?
Yeah.
I didn't realize I had all these little temper tantrums going on inside of aspects of myself that hadn't been merged and healed. And so frequency for me is something now that I focus on and try to maintain a particular alignment. And I know we spoke one time in another interview about what I think about the cross. And most people, including myself, I would rather have answers, but I realize the more I learn, the less I know. And I've heard that that is wisdom. And it was tough up front to accept that, but it's not so cut and dry what the answers are. It's more of a flow, it's a feeling. And so the part of the cross that's the horizontal is the linear, the part of the human condition that wants an answer, wants a diagnosis, wants to know. And then there's the part of the vertical, where you're rising your frequency, and the answers aren't as important as the journey, or as the adventure, or as the experience. Say we did choose to come here, we made, a lot of people use purpose. What's my purpose here? I happen to like the word contract, because that empowers me to have free will to choose, that I'm not a victim of God's doing, but that a lot of these lessons that I'm going through, I chose for some reason so that my soul would grow. I'm not sure to what end. I haven't come to any conclusions about that, but I know it feels right inside of my body when I say this. So my mother had passed away when I was 17. Why would I ever want that experience? Why would my mother and I make that contract together for me to go through that pain? Because I felt that half my body went in the grave with her. And you're 17, you haven't really completely understood what your identity is. And then to have an event like that happen, really that analogy of being put inside, broken pieces put inside of a brown paper bag, thrown out there, and to have to be put back together but better, without a map, without a flashlight, or knowing that you actually have one. But that event or that contract that my mother and I had together, once I started in Japan, what they do with broken vases is they put gold inside of it. And I didn't realize that I had the choice to put gold in there. And that came way later in life when I realized that concept. But I started putting myself back together, and I'm not really a good potter. And it wasn't like a great vase at the time, but I did start to put myself back together. You have to survive and move forward in your life. But that event, as I healed, I realized that God was there. And that when I saw my mother cross, I saw the difference. I could see where, even before the story from my client about her husband who had passed away and came back, that the soul became bigger, in the body, or there was a difference. It wasn't the same genealogy. When my mother's soul left, or the thing that made her her, I said at 17, wow, this is just her rented body. And when I reflect upon the wisdom that I said, it wasn't anything I thought of, it came through me, not of me. The event of my mother passing so much wisdom, so many gifts actually happened, and I became, over time, once I went through my opportunities to grow and experience life in maybe a dysfunctional way. So in the contrast to that, and living in a particular lifestyle that was self-sabotaging, I got sick of that and I started reaching for God, and I started reaching for something higher. And these things started to fall into place. I went to college, which I never thought I'd go to college. It's kind of a funny thing. And then I went on to divinity school to become a pastor. And I remember when God called me, I was like, I don't want to clean up my act. I don't want to do the hard work. But there was something that goes way back to my mother's passing that was an event that turned me in a direction. And it was not a straight arrow at first, but once I started to get over self-sabotaging actions, the arrow became straight. And again, I'm not going to say it was rainbows and butterflies. It was painful. Going to divinity school isn't like a group hug moment. It was like sandpaper on the skin. But through that, I found how much perseverance I had and how much I wanted this connection with God, and that I was here. My contract included helping people through their suffering. Because when my mother had hospice, they weren't all great that we had, but this one girl changed my life forever, Linda. She was like a little angel. And she just came and said the right things at the right time. And I realized that that was part of my call. And she came there to help me further find my purpose, find my contract, get to where I need to get. And these events of pain actually can be turned into grace, not just stay in grief. And I probably have told you this before, but when the chrysalis, the caterpillar is inside the chrysalis, if you actually peel the chrysalis open, the butterfly cannot fly. And in order for that butterfly to become as beautiful as it is once it comes out of the chrysalis, it needs the muscles. And it has to push and pull to break the chrysalis in order to be beautiful and fly away. And when I look at these events in my life that has happened, instead of feeling like a victim, I'm actually thankful now. I am thankful for those events because I've allowed myself, and I choose it. And I say this to myself, I choose my alignment with God. I choose this, I'm not a victim. I am healed, I am loved, I am worthy. And it took me a long time to say, I am worthy. And those are things that through my alignment with God and through these events, I've been able to come to and be able to program my body and every little cell and all those vibrations that may be going on individually as notes. I'm making a song, and the symphony is me, which is Stacy. And that's what cellular spirituality is, so that we can help each individual find out what their symphony